The Dalmatians. Puppies in trouble. On a sunny Sunday morning, a happy and loving family were enjoying the beautiful outdoors. The puppies were jumping and running around playing with a tennis ball, while their parents, Crumb, a cocker spaniel with a shiny brown coat, and Dot, a Dalmatian with a long pair of ears, were basking in the sun. The family always went on memorable and incredible adventures together. They always had fun wherever they were. Crumb was a playful and devoted father, and Dot was a caring and endearing mother. They loved each other and all their children with all their heart. When they were little, they were not close at all. Dot never let Crumb join all the fun she had with her two siblings. The Dalmatian triplets always picked on him, even when he did nothing wrong. Because of that, Crumb was always sad and lonely. Poor Crumb. But all that changed one summer afternoon. Dot was playing with her siblings, Timmy and Toby, near the forest. Timmy was quick on his feet and loved to wiggle his big black ears, while Toby was a bit clumsy and had a noticeable black spot around his right eye. None of them noticed Crumb eagerly approaching. Crumb asked if he could join them, but the siblings teased him and made fun of him instead. This made Crumb really sad. The mischievous triplets seemed to enjoy teasing Crumb so much that they decided to let him join, only to make fun of him even more. They told him to try to catch Dot after 15 counts while covering his eyes. Crumb was delighted that he finally got the chance to play with them. "Hooray!" he exclaimed. Little did he know, it was Dot's plan all along to leave him behind. As Crumb counted to 15, Dot immediately ran towards the town, and Timmy and Toby sneaked after her. 15! shouted Crumb. He looked around and saw from a distance that Timmy and Toby were already chasing Dot, so he tried his best to catch up. Still, the Dalmatian pups were too fast. Once again, Crumb was all alone. He turned around and walked home. "Oh well," sighed Crumb. Meanwhile, as Timmy and Toby reached the dingy of the town, still chasing after Dot, they bumped into the notorious Great Dane duo, Pollux and Castor. They suddenly got scared. Pollux and Castor were sly, feisty, and 10 times the size of the little Dalmatians. They ran a dog food factory, and they were badly in need of new laborers. So, the shady duo took the helpless Dalmatians with them, and Timmy and Toby couldn't do anything but cry. On the other side of the town, Dot ran so fast that she stopped to catch her breath. She formed a big smile on her face while picturing Crumb all alone. "Oh, Crumb," she smirked. Then her smile started to fade as she wondered why her siblings hadn't caught up to her yet. She decided to head back to see what they were doing. Alas, her siblings were nowhere to be found. Dot began to worry. While searching for her siblings, Dot saw Crumb warily walking home and hurried after him. Tears started to trickle down her cheeks as she told him that her siblings were missing. Crumb could have let her search all by herself given the way she and her siblings treated him, but he knew how it felt to be alone, so he decided to help her find them. Dot and Crumb searched high and low, tracing back the siblings' steps and visiting the places where Timmy and Toby usually went. Dot felt more and more dejected, but when she saw how eager Crumb wanted to help her, she wiped her tears away and continued to look for her siblings. Then, Dot and Crump reached an unfamiliar junkyard. There were lots of scraps, broken things, and random objects everywhere. They figured it was worth a try, so they entered. Out of nowhere, a pack of dogs appeared. Both Crumb and Dot were startled, but they decided to shake off their fear and act bravely. They needed all the help they could get. Crumb was hesitant, but he slowly approached the dogs. Their gang was known as the Backstreet Dogs. Boss, a gray Great Dane who loved to sleep, was the head of the pack. Freddy, a mutt, was Boss's right hand. Tramp, a scrawny-looking schnauzer, was the food keeper. Bloom, a bloodhound bookworm, was the gang's brains. Vera, a slender whippet, was the gatekeeper. And finally, Butcher, a massive bulldog, although a bit slow thinker, was the gang's muscles. They were the biggest gang on the west side of town, and this junkyard appeared to be their headquarters.
"What do you think you pups are doing?"
asked Boss with his big voice. Dot explained their situation and tried to convince the Backstreet Dogs to help them look for her siblings. It was a long shot, but she tried. Some of the dogs were hesitant, but ultimately, Boss agreed. Dot felt a ray of hope and smiled at Crumb. At the dog food factory, Timmy and Toby were busy sticking labels on dog food cans. Oh, how tiring and exhausting they must be. They have been working the entire day, and Toby was feeling particularly weary. But if they stopped working, they would get some harsh beating from Pollux. The poor Dalmatians had no choice but to follow the evil dog's biddings. They wished that someone would rescue them from the notorious duo. Later that day, back at the gang's headquarters, Dot was extremely sad and annoyed. She was afraid for her siblings' safety, and nobody else seemed to care. The gang still hadn't helped them. The members were either busy playing around or minding their own business. Even Crumb joined in on their fun. "I thought we were going to look for my siblings," Dot said to Crumb. Crumb came back to his senses and realized what they were doing, so he reminded Boss about their purpose.
"Okay, listen up,"
Boss commanded. He finally stood up and told everyone that they would take turns searching for Dot's siblings. The gang members teamed up, but no one wanted to pick Butcher. He was brave and strong, but nobody wanted to deal with his low intellect. Butcher did not appreciate that at all. Freddy and Vera volunteered to head out first, and Butcher was furious that the two did not tag him along. The other members snickered. It seemed that some members were not taking this seriously. Instead of looking for Dot's siblings, Freddy and Vera ran after cats, dug a few rubbish bins, and played. Exhausted from goofing around, Freddy and Vera decided to head back. They didn't want anybody to know that they never did their task properly, so they just told everyone that Timmy and Toby weren't in that part of town. Dot was really distraught, so Boss tried to cheer her up by telling her that he and Tramp would continue the search. Butcher eagerly volunteered to join, but Boss just laughed and told him to stay as he and Tramp headed out, while the rest of the gang went back to what they were doing. This made Butcher furious. The gang often underestimated him, but since he really wanted to help, he decided to look for Timmy and Toby on his own, especially since no one else wanted to team up with him. And off he went. Boss and Tramp arrived at the western part of the town, and just like Freddy and Vera, they just goofed around making a mess wherever they go. It looked like Boss wasn't really serious about helping Dot. Meanwhile, Butcher was sniffing and walking around when he saw a huge Doberman packing sausages near a dog food factory. Feeling a bit hungry himself, he asked the Doberman for whom were the sausages for. The Doberman told Butcher his name and said that the sausages were for 2 little Dalmatians. "Oh," sighed Butcher. "Guess I'll just eat when I get back," he said to himself, still thinking about the sausages. After saying his goodbye, he headed back to the junkyard without even realizing that the 2 Dalmatians could be Dot's missing siblings. He was almost one step closer to finding them. Oh, Butcher. Knowing that Butcher's search would be useless, the gang didn't bother to ask how it went when he returned. But it was already getting dark, and Dot, needing even the smallest glimmer of hope, asked Butcher about his search. Everybody was shocked upon the mention of 2 Dalmatians and Castor. They could be the siblings. And according to the gang, Castor and his brother Pollux were pretty aggressive Dobermans. Some of gang were still surprised that all this information came from Butcher. Oh, if only Butcher realized these sooner. Dot felt bad for her siblings, but she was somewhat relieved to know they had a lead. They would be able to save them from misery soon. Bloom, Tramp, Freddy, Crumb, and Dot devised a plan to rescue the siblings. All knew that rescuing them would not be an easy task. Pollux and Castor were notorious for a reason, and attacking them head-on would certainly result to failure. They badly needed a plan. Bloom, being the brains of the gang, knew that it would be best to visit the factory with Crumb to know its weak points and to investigate further. Everybody spent the entire night planning it through. And the gang seemed suddenly determined to rescue Timmy and Toby that not even cats and rubbish bins were able to distract them. Dot felt so grateful for all Crumb and the gang's efforts. The following morning, Bloom and Crumb woke up early to prepare for the investigation. Dot hardly slept. She hoped that Bloom and Crumb would be successful. It was a busy day at the factory. New cans needed labels, so it would be another tiring day for Dot's siblings. Looking around, Bloom and Crumb pretended that they wanted to buy a lot of sausages. They were faced by Pollux, who was excited to know that the traveling businessmen were interested with their sausages. Pollux was in a good mood, but he was still 10 times their size, so they knew that ambushing him would not be a good idea. Instead of attacking, they tried looking for loopholes in the factory's security. They uncovered that the factory was equipped with an alarm system that could only be disabled with a 6-digit code. It will be a tough rescue indeed. Back at the junkyard, the gang members were all busy playing around, and Dot was anxiously pacing back and forth. When Bloom and Crumb returned, they told them about their discovery. Everyone knew that there was no way for them to figure out the code to the alarm, so they spent the rest of the day figuring out other ways to save Dot's siblings. But they were not able to come up with a great plan, so Boss decided to wait until morning to figure out their next move. "It's gonna be okay," Crumb reassured Dot. Dot felt really sad and hopeless. Crumb comforted her, but eventually fell asleep. Dot knew her siblings needed her, so she sneaked out while everybody was sleeping. "Don't go," said a mysterious voice. Dot looked around to check where the voice came from and saw a vaguely familiar big black crow staring at her. She always saw that crow following her around, but paid no attention to it, as her mind was set in saving her siblings. She sneaked off to the factory and the crow followed her. The moon was bright when Dot and the crow arrived at the factory. Dot's heart was pounding so hard. She felt as if it was about to explode. She tried to act bravely as she entered the factory. She knew that it was a risky move, but she badly wanted to save Timmy and Toby. As she was searching and sneaking around, the alarm went off and she was caught in a trap. She tried her best to escape, but it was too hard. She desperately looked for the crow, but it already flew away from the factory. Poor Dot. Even the crow abandoned her. Pollux and Castor came running, caught Dot, and threw her in together with her siblings. Their sinister smirk was all over their faces since they were excited to let Dot work in the factory too. Finally, it was an unfortunate circumstance, but at least Dot was reunited with her siblings. Dot sobbed so hard that her cries were heard all over the factory while hugging them. "Dot!" cried Timmy and Toby. They missed her as much as she missed them. The triplets, together once more. Hoping that help would come soon, they still had yet to figure out how to escape. The next day, the morning sun was hiding, as if sympathizing with the Dalmatians. Crumb rose and looked for Dot, but was puzzled because she was nowhere to be found. "Oh no, Dot!" cried Crumb. The gang soon realized that Dot was missing. They knew that she could have gone alone to try rescue her siblings, and if so, she was most definitely caught already by Pollux and Castor. They quickly gathered around to devise a plan. Butcher, being very impatient and feeling always left out, decided to run away again and save the Dalmatians alone. He left with full might, determined to save Dot and her siblings. What a valiant friend! But poor Butcher never saw it coming, and he was caught in the trap too. The gang knew that they could no longer afford to wait around. Even Butcher went missing. Without devising a plan, they decided to face the notorious duo head-on. Together, they sought after the factory. It was a gloomy afternoon when they arrived, and they were immediately faced by Pollux and Castor. It seemed that they knew the gang was coming. Pollux and Castor knew that no one could go past their trap, so they taunted the dogs to attack them. The gang was furious, but they did not know what to do, and that amused Pollux and Castor even more. Out of nowhere, the majestic crow appeared. It flew past the dogs straight to the alarm and entered a combination that instantly disabled the alarm. Who would have thought that the crow knew the code? Finally, there was nothing between the gang and the two evil dogs. Pollux and Castor's smirk suddenly turned into frowns, and the two Dobermans felt fear. They were outnumbered, and they knew that they were no match to the backstreet dogs without their trap. Without hesitation, the gang gloriously attacked the notorious duo with all their might and gave them a beating that they deserved and would never forget. The backstreet dogs finally caught Pollux and Castor and released Timmy, Toby, Dot, and Butcher. Dot was overjoyed as she expressed her gratitude to the crow and the gang, to whom she apologized for sneaking out. Most especially, she was thankful for Crumb, who was always there for her, despite what she and her siblings did to him. Dot valued her kindness and generosity. Dot, Timmy, and Toby apologized to Crumb for everything. They promised him that from then on, they would never tease or pick on him anymore. They would always play with him and be with him, no matter what. Crumb blushed, stuttered, and giggled, while the gang and the crow had a good laugh. The sun finally appeared when they arrived at the gang's junkyard. Boss threw a victory party for everyone and celebrated with their newly found friends. He thanked everyone, especially Butcher, who showed heroism, for their bravery and commitment in saving the siblings. He also wished Dot and Crumb a good life together. Years passed, and Dot and Crumb grew up and had their own cute little puppies together. They raised their young ones to be good, and they taught them that being kind to everyone is the key to a happy life. The Crow and Butcher stayed with them, and they went on different adventures together. But they will never forget how it all started and how they all became great friends. The end.